The second Trump administration now underway. Good evening to you. I'm Reuben Jones on a special edition of Capitol Tonight from our nation's capital. On his first day in office, President Donald Trump issued a sweeping set of executive orders, much of which he ran on in the campaign. The White House says they are promises kept, but others have major concerns about those executive orders, and they've already resulted in a number of legal challenges. Now, the executive orders touch on everything from immigration to the economy to the Department of Justice. Let me walk you through a couple of these executive orders which really run the gamut here. Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border and will use the military to secure the border. Cartels will be designated as terrorist organizations. He signed an order ending birthright citizenship, the constitutional guarantee that anyone born in the United States is a citizen regardless of their parents' immigration status. That order prompted North Carolina Democrat Attorney General Jeff Jackson to sign on to a lawsuit with more than a dozen state AGs suing Trump, saying the order violates the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Now, Trump began the process also of pulling out of the World Health Organization. Or critics say that would harm diplomacy and U.S. influence abroad and potentially endanger the health of Americans. Instead, there's been a push for Trump to reform the WHO, not exit. Trump also signed an order withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. He ended diversity, inclusion, and equity policies in the federal government, and he's renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And it wasn't just orders where Trump quickly changed the course of government. He also pardoned more than 1,500 of his supporters charged with crimes in the attack on this building on January 6, 2021. Those pardons include many people who pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement, including a man who attacked police with a fire extinguisher, a wooden plank, and a pole. Now, Trump campaigned on pardons, but even his vice president, J.D. Vance, said just earlier this month that January 6 participants who committed violence should, quote, obviously not be pardoned. Tonight, I've got one-on-one interviews with Senator Thom Tillis, Senator Ted Budd, both Republicans. They differ on that question of pardons for January 6 defendants. I'll also talk to a Democrat, Congresswoman Alma Adams, about all of this on a very busy day here in the nation's capital. But we're going to start tonight with Senator Ted Budd. And Senator Ted Budd joins me now in the Capitol. Senator, I know it was a late night. Thank you for making time. Appreciate it.
Glad to. Thank you.
So you were inside the rotunda as the president delivered his inauguration address. I'm curious what it was like inside there and what you took away from the address.
It was surreal just to be there, to see the most amazing comeback in American history, to see just a range of people that had supported him that weren't traditional Republicans, to see traditional Republicans there, to see the former presidents. It was an amazing experience. It was very patriotic. I mean, to have what ended up being an a cappella performance by Carrie Underwood and also the military band was just amazing as well.
And a bit unusual, obviously, because it was indoors and not outside.
It was.
I'm sure it had a different feel.
It did, but it was the traditional ceremony, but moved indoors, and wisely so. But then it didn't end there. In the Emancipation Hall, which is down a few set of flights of stairs, President Trump continued. He went down there. He gave yet another speech to those that weren't able to be in person upstairs. So he certainly believes to bring great value to our country and those who supported him. There were hundreds and hundreds of people more downstairs that weren't able to fit in the rotunda, and he went and visited with them as well.
Certainly kept us running around. He also mentioned Western North Carolina in his address, talking about
Yes.
helping the folks down there in the recovery efforts following Helene. What do you need to see from the Trump administration right off the bat to make sure people down there are getting what they need?
Clarity and communication, which we have not had under the Biden administration. It's just been very unclear. And again, there's a lot of good people on the ground with FEMA that want to do the right thing, but they've had misdirectives and bad directives over the last several months. I mean, there should have been early support and clarity early on. So I want to say, first of all, if anyone is stuck, if they don't understand what's next when it comes to FEMA or government assistance, make sure they reach out to our office, bud.senate.gov. We're working hand in hand with President Trump on the White House response in the next phase ahead, particularly in the next 100 days.
And we know that FEMA made that announcement just about a week ago, extending the rentals for that.
They did. There were a lot of people in the snowstorm that we had recently and the plunging temperatures. They were kicked out in the middle of that. And so we said we want to be there to help. We went line by line through a lot of these names and numbers, and we're calling people, getting them back into their temporary shelter.
President Trump issued numerous executive orders, executive actions yesterday.
Yes,
We know that
about
more.
200.
Yeah, and we know more are going to be coming. One
Yeah.
big focus was immigration, which I know you have talked a lot about in the past in terms of what's happening at the border. He has said he's going to declare a national emergency on the southern border, which will open up more resources in terms of military personnel or whatever's needed to go down there. Migrant encounters in this past December were down from December 2020. What do you say to folks who say, are dramatic actions needed if the trajectory seems to be headed down?
Well, it's definitely the Trump effect. They know the results of November 5th. And people, the whole election was about people feeling unsafe and that things were unaffordable. So that is what all of these executive actions were about. We're making us safe and prosperous again. And so that's what we're going to focus on the next 100 days. But when it comes to migrant encounters, they know what the results were. So if they're going to be brought back or they're going to be deported, why would they want to come to the U.S. illegally anyway? So again, these folks, they're smart. We don't want them to come here illegally. We want people to come here legally. We already let in more than 1 million a year, but again, why come if they're going to be deported?
Are you comfortable with the military heading to the more additional military support head to the border?
Whatever we need to do to secure our country and within the bounds of the Constitution, absolutely.
His executive order seeking to end the practice of birthright citizenship does already face a lawsuit. Do you agree with the president's actions to try and get rid of that, and do you think it will hold up in court?
Look, I'm not an attorney. I want to look at the particulars of this, but again, making our country safe, making us prosperous, that's what November 5th was about. So anything to make that happen within the bounds of the law and the Constitution, absolutely.
He also made a lot of news in regards to pardons that he issued sort of later in the day. He pardoned more than 1,500 of his supporters charged with crimes in the attack on January 6th here at the U.S. Capitol. You were here during that attack. You were a member of Congress on the House side of things, and at the time you called them a violent mob. Are you comfortable with the pardons the president issued?
I think no matter where you are politically, that's a bad day for our country, but I'll say that was a promise that he ran on, and he is a president about promises made, promises kept. But if you want to look at what Biden did preemptively to pardon his family, that is a pure admission of guilt. I don't even know if that's going to hold up, but that's never been done before in our country's history. He promised that he would not do that. President Biden said in 2020 that he would not do that, and he did. He pardoned his family, which to me, that's an admission of guilt.
The president obviously definitely did run on putting in place those pardons. There were some who thought, and including the now vice president, had said that maybe these should be tailored in terms of who gets those pardons. Were you surprised that they were as sweeping as they were?
Well, look, there were some pardons, there were some commutations. They were tailored between pardons and commutations, so there were a distinction among some of them.
A good portion of the people who were charged with assaulting or resisting law enforcement.
Look, the voters on November 5th of last year, they understood all of this. But I would say only the people here in Washington, D.C. are wrapped up about this. People want to get on. They want to get on to safety. They want to get on to prosperity. They aren't wrapped up in that. They're worried about making our country great again, and that's what President Trump ran on, and that's what he won on.
Last question on it. Do you worry, though, that it sends a message about for these people who were charged with hurting law enforcement?
Absolutely not. This is the country, this is the party of law and order. Look, if you look at the Laken-Riley Act, which was the first bill that we just passed in the Senate, that was Senator Katie Britt's and my bill that we worked on. It's about making our country safe again. That's what people want. We want to support law enforcement. We want to give them the tools, but we don't want to weaponize DOJ, and that's what November 5th was about.
Senator Ted Budd, appreciate your time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
North Carolina's other senator is also a Republican, but on this question of pardoning January 6 defendants, there is a disagreement. I briefly chatted with Senator Tom Tillis about this question earlier. Take a listen.
Let me just get your thoughts on the pardons from President Trump regarding.
Yeah, I've got any of we're going through it now. Many of them probably was the right thing to do. They made a bad choice, but anybody who was convicted of assault on a police officer, I can't get there at all. I think it was a bad idea.
Are you worried that in terms of
by the way, we can't have a story about pardons without talking about the nonsense that Biden did on his way out the door.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question is, do you think the Senate needs to look at the power of the pardon for the presidency?
I think it's a legit question because we can't get into this cycle where presidents are, pardoning their friends, creating prospective pardons for charges that haven't even been applied. I don't think that that's what the founding fathers had in mind when this ability to pardon was first vested in the executive branch.
Tillis, they're referencing the last-minute pardons from President Joe Biden of members of his family. This is going to be an issue to follow. Not only the question of pardon power, but also that question of these January 6 defendants, this disagreement, potentially some within the Republican Party, as we just saw there from Senator Tillis. I'll be keeping an eye on this throughout the week. First, though, we do want to take our first break, and coming up after the break, I'll be joined by a Democrat in this conversation, Congresswoman Alma Adams of North Carolina. Stay with us. We'll be right back on a special edition of Capitol Tonight. And thanks for staying with us here on Capitol Tonight, a special edition of the show from the nation's capital. I'm Reuben Jones. We are following the first full day of President Donald Trump's second administration, and it has been a busy first day. We just heard from North Carolina's Republican Senators Ted Budd and Tom Tillis. Now we're going to go to not only the other side of the aisle, but also the other chamber, and we're joined by North Carolina Democrat Congresswoman Alma Adams, who I spoke with earlier today. And Congresswoman Alma Adams joins us now. Congresswoman, thanks for making time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You too. And you were inside of the rotunda during the inauguration address yesterday. I wonder what you thought of the president's speech.
Well, I don't give him great reviews, as he said. He's getting good reviews, but it was a mixed bag. I was very concerned about some of the things he said. I thought that the tone could have been a lot more positive. Especially as it relates to the outgoing president, who I think did really do a good job and left things pretty much in good hands for him. But I thought it was a little punitive in terms of his talking about people and that kind of thing. But he actually was trying to fulfill the promises that he made during the campaign. They are not, to me, the best things that are going to serve our community, but I think that was one of his goals.
So, as you mentioned, a lot of these executive actions, executive orders that he signed yesterday were what he ran on in the campaign. You obviously disagree with a lot of them, but what do you think, as a Democrat, can you do in terms of this, and what is your message to those who say these are just what he ran on, the American people supported them?
Well, we can say that, but I'm looking for accountability here. I'm hoping that as we look to the future that will benefit many of the citizens that I represent, the citizens, hardworking people who work hard every day, 2 and 3 jobs, trying to make the ends meet, who need health insurance, who need their grocery bills going down, their gas bills to go down, those kinds of things. I'm looking at some accountability for those people. Because the president said, even during the campaign, well, this is going to happen on the first day. Well, I went to the grocery store yesterday and I didn't see anything like that. But I do think that we have to, that as the president, for those who voted for him, for those who did not, we're all counting on some results.
Are there areas where you feel that you can work with Republicans to get legislation passed this Congress?
Well, let me just say, I have always worked with Republicans. As a matter of fact, the bills that we are most successfully known for are not only bipartisan, but bicameral. I have the bipartisan HBCU caucus with French Hill, and I work very closely together. On the Senate side, we have Senator Tim Scott and Senator Coons pairing off there. So we're going to continue that work because that's important. If the president succeeds, I think then we can succeed. If he does, and I think, again, he's got to project out to all of the people, not just his base, but those people who really need the support.
A lot more to talk to Congresswoman Alma Adams about on the other side of the break, including the pardons by President Donald Trump of the January 6th defendants. We'll ask her about that next. Stay with us, Capitol Tonight. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us this Tuesday evening. I'm Reuben Jones on a special edition of Capitol Tonight from our nation's capital. We're going to continue our conversation with Democrat Congresswoman Alma Adams about the first day of the Trump administration. The president also did about around 1,500 pardons for defendants on January 6th. The president ran on that, but there was some thought that he would tailor some of those pardons to people that were not charged with hurting law enforcement officers. Were you taken aback or surprised?
I wasn't surprised that he did the pardons, because he did say he was going to do that. I am surprised, though, that with all of the talk that you hear Republicans say about the protecting police officers and the respect that they have for law enforcement, that he would pardon people who beat up and not only who beat up law enforcement, but I mean, we had some people to die. We had some law enforcement officers to be damaged permanently and to lose their lives. So I was really shocked at that. I don't think that should have happened. I think it sets the wrong example. You can do wrong. You can beat up a police officer. You can deface democracy, which is what they did in the Capitol. That's all right. So I think he set the wrong tone. I really do.
Republicans have criticized President Joe Biden on his last day for pardoning members of his family. Do you think that Congress needs to look at the power of the pardon for the president?
I think we need to look at the pardon of the power, the power of the pardon of the president. But I don't blame President Biden. I mean, clearly, it was all indications that this president, our new president, was actually going to go after people and really harm them. And so, listen, he's a father, and I'm a mother. I'm going to try to take care of my kids, and I guess the same thing was true for him. I think Trump would have done the same thing too. So, but I do think we need to probably review that process.
Congresswoman Alma Adams, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Congresswoman Alma Adams and all the lawmakers this evening, and our thanks to you for joining us on this special edition of Capitol Tonight. I'll be back here tomorrow night for more on this first week of the Trump administration and this new Congress. A lot to get to, and we hope you'll join us tomorrow night. Take care.